Very good afternoon, all. It is my pleasure to have you all for the webinar, Seamless Cross-Border E-Commerce in a Pandemic World. The last year and a half has been unprecedented times for the global population at large. And I think there's been a common collective action to fight an unknown enemy. Hope you and your loved ones are staying safe during this period. It's actually no secret that every aspect of our lives have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020-21. Our mobility has been limited. Masks have become an essential item. And most interestingly, work from home has become the new normal. Luckily, human beings have been always having an extraordinary ability to adapt, even to the most challenging conditions. So when going out has become a risk, I would say the world has turned to digital as a new way to cope up with the new normal. Online shopping has definitely got its fair share from it. Global e-commerce has always been growing rapidly much before 2020. But it's estimated that the pandemic has actually accelerated the shift away from the physical stores by roughly 5 years, which means that we will probably achieve our numbers of 2025 as early as 2023 itself. So having said that, welcome all of you. And today I have with me as a co-panelist, Nitin Indurkar, Regional Manager Sales, Ping Pong Global Solutions Incorporated. Hello, Nitin.
Hi, Abhishek.
Hi. Nitin comes with an experience of about 10 years in the field of cross-border e-commerce, B2B platforms, and global payments. He has in the past been associated with eBay for leading the cross-border expansion of sellers from India. And I'm your host for the day, Abhishek Mitra. I lead the cross-border business vertical at Vinculum globally. I'm actually quite passionate about building an ecosystem of brand distributors, enhancing the product integrations across all e-commerce channels, and of course, adding value-added partners as part of an extended network to help SMEs, MSMEs, and brands to expand internationally. So in today's webinar, ladies and gentlemen, we'll discuss various aspects ranging from emerging trends, countries to watch out for, categories in focus, enablers for success in the cross-border space, amongst many others. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the session, and I would request all of you to use the Q&A button to ask your questions. So while the screen is coming on. Okay. So let's go to some of the interesting statistics first. And I would request my counterpart Sakshi to take us to the first slide. Okay. So as you can see from the slide, the retail e-commerce sales is expected to go from 1.5 trillion in 2017 to about 4.8 trillion in 2021, registering a very impressive growth of about 20.6% in terms of CAGR. However, with the lockdown in different parts of the world and limited business across offline channels, I'll be very surprised if the e-commerce absolute sales would not cross the US $1.5 trillion mark by the end of this year itself. Next slide. So e-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales globally has actually grown from about 10.2% to roughly about 17.5%. And this data by the end of 2021 could potentially be higher and reach close to 20% of total retail sales. China will, of course, continue to dominate the e-commerce sales, followed by US, UK, Japan, and South Korea. Countries in Europe, the likes of UK, France, Germany will also show higher growth in e-commerce as compared to the traditional retail. And then again, India is making very rapid strides in the CAGR growth year on year and could be amongst the top 5 by as early as 2024. Next slide. So according to a report by Statista, Cross-border e-commerce will amount to almost $3.5 trillion by 2022. This contributing to around 22% of e-commerce shipments of physical products. I've seen many arguing that the pandemic has actually affected the global retail business. However, as you would see in the statistics, it actually says otherwise. In 2019, we actually had just about 2 billion days in the full year. And as per Business Insider, we've already done 130 days that have passed the milestone of $2 billion in 2020. In 2021, this could easily see a 20% growth over the 2020 numbers. Again, as per Business Insider, Amazon has been one of the most talked about e-commerce names in 2020. Amazon's global e-commerce sales will reach $12 billion, which is actually more than the pre-pandemic estimates for the current year, as consumers rely more heavily on e-commerce due to the pandemic. Despite the global recession, e-commerce is definitely growing in almost every country. Even countries like Philippines, Malaysia, and Spain are projected to have more than 20% e-commerce growth, despite heavily being impacted by the coronavirus. I move on to the next slide. I would call upon my co-panelist Nitin to mention, Nitin, in your opinion, how would be some of the cross-border benefits for SMEs, MSMEs, and brands in the short to long term?
Right, Abhishek. First of all, I do agree with data you have just shown regarding growing e-commerce across globe. Yes, there is a dramatic increase in the number of online shopper worldwide during this ongoing COVID pandemic. There is a shift in consumer behavior toward the online first model. The escalation of the shift to online shopping versus this bricks and mortar is forcing many small and medium businesses to rethink and adapt their future business models. Going with the cross-border e-commerce, absolutely, it's a good option nowadays, not only for short term but for long term as well, because cross-border e-commerce allow you to introduce and innovate with the new product. It will also help you for the larger reach to the global audience who is having a better, or you can say higher purchasing power than their domestic countries. Definitely, it will lead to international expansion where the domestic e-commerce retailer can expand their businesses and market penetration in international market, leading to increased revenues and of course their brand awareness as well. So yes, seller can maximize selling their low demand domestic e-commerce product as well in the international market. So yes, there are many benefits and advantage of going with the cross-border e-commerce for SMEs and MSMEs.
Absolutely, Nitin, can't agree more. In fact, as we speak, for a lot of SMEs and MSMEs, Amazon has been the go-to strategy as far as e-commerce is concerned. A lot of marketplaces internationally are catching up. And as I explained before, that during this pandemic, due to the uncertainties around businesses opening up in many countries at different phases for offline, e-commerce definitely has been the shining star. Many businesses have actually recalibrated their contribution from e-commerce business. And I'm sure that in a medium to long term, e-commerce is definitely here to expand. In fact, as far as cross-border is concerned, I would also say that many businesses are looking at a target market outside their own country for getting the first mover advantage. Today, we see many brands in the startup ecosystem, right from brands funded or medium to long-term brands who have taken the next step in terms of a global expansion, and they have done fairly well for themselves in new markets. So it just explains that anybody who's contemplating a move to e-commerce, the time is now. Moving on to the next slide, and now we will get into specifics of the region-wise and the country contribution. So no surprises here. Northern America, Europe have been the traditional strongholds for e-commerce, being very mature markets. The rate of growth is expected to be modest in a 4-year time period between 2017 and 21. However, Latin America, Middle East, and Southeast Asia are expected to be the most promising markets in terms of CAGR. These markets are actually growing on account of a larger population shopping online. I can think of increase in digital penetration. There's of course a rise of online marketplace. A lot of niche marketplaces have come up. A lot of marketplaces in Southeast Asia have also become multi-country marketplaces, the likes of Lazada, Shopee, Zalora, Zilingo, Q10 to name a few. And of course, easy shipping options amongst others. Moving on. So here we talk about some of the countries in terms of very attractive markets for growth, which can be considered as in the GTM strategy that is made by the sellers and the brands. So while China takes the crown as the largest e-commerce market in 2020, with an estimated $630 billion of sales, in terms of absolute growth numbers, very interesting statistics. India is at the top of the pie, growing at about 20% CAGR, followed by Indonesia at about 17.7%, South Africa at about 13.5%, Mexico at close to 12.5%, and Saudi Arabia and Middle East at about 11.3%. So we've actually had a lot of countries coming in from the regions which I explained in the previous slide, countries in Southeast Asia, MENA region, and Latin America. Moving on to the next slide, please. So what I've done is, on the basis of some of the data in the previous slides, I have actually set up the infographic as a classification for markets to choose from for our audience. And as a result, I've also divided the countries as top tier, developing markets, and emerging economies for e-commerce. So in the top tier markets, some of the classifications would be, of course, these are mature markets with large penetration of online shoppers. These are pretty much advanced digital economies, and they present a very integrated logistic network for quick turnaround. So you see all the top 10 nations as far as e-commerce sales is concerned covered: United States, UK, China, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. The next set is what I call as a second wave, or the developing markets. These include India, Indonesia, Mexico, Brazil, Saudi Arabia. And some of the characteristics for these markets could be early stage e-commerce development. Unfortunately, some of these countries also have complex domestic regulations, which are actually getting eased up as we speak. Payment gateways and internet penetration has also been a reason that these countries are showing very, very promising growth numbers. The last category consists of what I call as a wait and see, or the emerging markets. These include Russia, Argentina, South Africa, and Nigeria. These markets are extremely high potential, but long term. But in the current scenario, they suffer from uncertain political climates and challenging infrastructures. Moving on to the next slide.
Abhishek, I think we should have a poll now.
Okay, yeah, let's have a poll question now. So I would request the moderator to put up the question, and we'll have 30 seconds to record your responses. Thank you all. Thank you, Sakshi, for having that poll question. We move on to our next slide. Okay, perfect. So we actually get back into the details of the cross-border statistics, and very interesting proposition here. The total number of cross-border online shoppers, and this list is dominated by China at around 150 million online shoppers. US, India with about 53 million shoppers, Russia and Mexico constitute the next four. And this is a very, very interesting statistics. This also shows that a lot of customers in India are buying internationally. Marketplaces are making it very easy for the shoppers to receive deliveries in less than a fortnight, sometimes as early as less than 7 days. Payment gateways are extremely convenient and very fluid. And there's a large assortment that is available on marketplaces like Alibaba. Amazon Global again has a program where shoppers from India and other countries can buy across any marketplace. eBay and Lazada also have a large amount of success attributed to their global selling program. Moving on. Okay, this has been one of the more interesting infographics. A lot of customers have actually asked which categories can I focus on, and what are some of the categories that have high potential when it comes to cross-border. So the traditional top-selling categories before the pandemic have always been fashion apparels, consumer electronics, beauty and personal care. However, what's strange is that with the pandemic came a completely new range of categories which saw exponential growth. I can count medical products being one of them. In fact, a recent survey by Adobe revealed that the online sales of products like hand sanitizers, gloves, and masks grew by about 800% in the first 10 weeks from the time the pandemic hit. That's a very, very significant number. And as different countries evolve around different cycles of the pandemic, in India, we are almost in phase 2, as everybody is saying. There could be a few other waves, and each country is having their own life cycle when it comes to the pandemic. Masks definitely, along with hand sanitizers and products which are immunity boosters, are here to stay. According to Etsy's Q2 report, 4 million people have come to Etsy for masks alone. Oh, that's a rapid sales spike of about 145%. So another concept that came into our lives in 2020 is the hashtag stay at home. And when I say hashtag, it's one of the most talked about hashtags on Twitter. We don't just relax at home now. We actually work, exercise, and socialize at home too. So it's understandable that the sales of home furnishing products are on the rise as people are trying to improve their living and working spaces. In the US alone, sales for home improvement products have increased by 13%. CAGR over the previous year. Fitness equipment is also gaining more and more popularity as outdoor movement is hugely restricted and our homes become actually the new gym. The demand for fitness equipment has increased by about 55% in the first 2 weeks of this financial year. And apart from the ones which I've just mentioned, there are product categories which were slightly lower in the graphic that was shown. Cookware, DIY products, baby and mom, these are categories which are rapidly making strides during the pandemic and are here to stay for the next probably 6 months to 1 year horizon. I would also request Nitin to share his thoughts on any other categories that will have potential during this period and the next 2 years.
Right, Abhishek. So, I mean, if we talk about sellers who are planning to start their cross-border e-commerce business this year or in the next 1 or 2 months, so fortunately there are plenty of options for a seller who want to go for a cross-border e-commerce. You can choose a global e-commerce platform according to your target country or region. So in that case, if you want to tap North America or South America, platform like global e-commerce platform like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Wish, Neweggs are there. In case if you want to tap Europe, beside Amazon on eBay, Zalando is going great there in Europe, in Europe side. If you want to tap UAE, then Noon and SKU is there. In India, if you want to tap India, then Amazon, Flipkart, ShopClues are one of the best platforms, you can say. Similarly, like Southeast countries like Singapore, Malaysia, you can go for Lazada and Shopee. For Australia, New Zealand, Amazon and eBay are there. Talking about the current trends, yes, I do agree with you that essential products are going very well, especially face mask and the face shield. People are now really focusing on their fitness, so they are going for fitness equipments, product like yoga mats and all. Wearable device and gadgets are going well, smart watches and fitness tracker. Um, as rightly pointed out by you, that now we are getting into, or the work from home culture is growing across globe. So we can see the lounge wear has replaced the work wear. We are going for a lounge wear on a higher side. Posture corrector, as we are working from home, so we required the demand of posture corrector, water bottles, desk chairs, seat cushions are going. Uh, Due to the rise of blogging and live streaming, many people need these trending products to shoot their videos. Like the phones and tripods are there. Pet products are increasing. Now we are spending more time with the families, and the children are also at home. So the product like board games, indoor games, their demands are also increasing. If I talk about India, then people are really searching for immunity booster products. So there is an increase in demand of Indian herbal Ayurveda product, organic product in the international market as well.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that sums up a lot of potential categories. So not only for sellers from India, but from anywhere across the world, it really does not matter. But the pandemic has really brought upon a new focus. Some of the categories which were hitherto unknown or probably made low impact have now come on to make a very large impact. Our life has changed around the pandemic. So these categories will evolve. And thank you, Nitin, for being very, very elaborate on the categories which have potential. Moving on. Okay, so this is again one of the more talked about points of any cross-border discussion. What really could be the business models that we could look at? So traditionally, the models have been, in fact, the top three have always been the preferred models. You can either look at cross-border through your own web store. You can choose to have marketplaces like eBay, Amazon, Shopee, which allow for cross-border sellers to do B2C drop shipments. The other two models are the ones which are actually growing as we speak, because a lot of sellers are now starting to trust the local ecosystem partners who can create an entire stack of omni-channel retail for them. So the brand distributor model becomes very interesting. There are again cost benefits of B2B shipments, because in today's pandemic world with limited passenger and cargo flights operating between countries, B2B shipments does make a case for saving on logistic cost. And of course, the brand distributors, they have enough expertise in the local market to kind of give these value additions for local content. They can probably facilitate multi-channel retail, and of course look at inventory liquidation for unsold stock. So it becomes a very interesting business proposition. The fourth model, which has probably come up in the last probably 2 years, has been a model which has more to do with a B2B model, but rather than keeping it in a distributor-oriented duty paid space, you park it in a DFTZ zone, which is actually a digital free trade zone. Digital free trade zones have been developed in countries where the development of e-commerce has been the highest, the likes of UAE, Malaysia, Singapore. India also has DFTZs incidentally. And these are kept mostly for fast-selling products and categories. Whenever you receive orders from any of the online or offline partners, you can look at fulfilling locally in the shortest possible SLA. Sellers can also benefit by saving on transit time for shipment, the cost of logistics. Duties need to be only paid for items ordered. And of course, managing the e-commerce operations can happen from their own countries. So that's a model which has evolved, and a lot of sellers in the current ecosystem are looking at the DFTZ space, keeping the goods in the country of retail and using the 3PL network more efficiently. Moving on. So Nitin, you were talking about some of the marketplaces by geos, and of course the likes of Amazon, eBay, and Lazada in Southeast Asia have been the first movers in this segment. But would you also want to throw about a lot of sellers have been actually requesting introductions to marketplace, which are the niche category marketplaces, like how Myntra has been able to build a marketplace for fashion and lifestyle and is considered as the more premium destination when it comes to brands of choice. Likewise, Nykaa had built a marketplace for beauty and personal care and has now diversified into the entire fashion space. So would you throw some light in terms of some of the marketplaces, the niche marketplaces which are developing and which become very, very interesting for some of our cross-border sellers?
Yes, I have already covered that. In Europe, beside Amazon and eBay, people can go for global platform like Zalando, which is good for the European market, and UAE and Southeast countries are still untapped, you can say. So the platform like Noon, Skew, and the for the Southeast countries, the platform like Lazada and Shopee are very helpful.
Perfect, perfect. And just to add to that point, the infographic is actually spread across regions, but there are also smaller regions which are considered as potential markets. So around India, you see a network of South Asian countries, the likes of which has marketplaces like Daraz. Daraz is also incidentally a multi-country marketplace present in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, amongst other countries. There are also marketplaces which are centered over Southeast Asia. A few of them are niche marketplaces which are not included in the list. So in your cross-border strategy, you need to look at not only the horizontal marketplaces, but if your category is focusing on very, very niche products, for instance, if you are a seller in the home decor space, and if you're looking at expanding into Northern American market, besides looking at Amazon, eBay, which are the more broad-based markets, you should also look at House and Wayfair, which are markets meant for the home decor products. Likewise, in the Southeast Asia, if you are focusing on beauty and personal care products, there's a website called Lelong, which is based in Malaysia, which actually caters to the beauty and personal care segment. So please have the marketplaces in terms of their focus as part of your expansion plans, whether it's a niche marketplace or whether it's a horizontal marketplace. Okay, we move on now to the next segment, which has the important considerations for SME, MSME, and brands. Next slide, please. So some of the important considerations could entail working on an online-only strategy to a web store-only model or a full-fledged expansion both offline and online. Product differentiators bases the competitive landscape, your social, cultural ethos, duties, and taxes. These should be carefully considered while making the entry strategy. Moving on to the second part, which are some of the usual pain points for sellers to consider while moving online. Here, I would have Nitin share his thoughts on some of the pain points around payment remittance and local and legal compliances. Nitin, if you could share some insights on this.
Yes, Abhishek. As we all know, with the growth of e-commerce, the online payment and the fund transfers has also increased. And yes, there are few pain points in not exactly the pain point we can say, but we can say the compliance requirements are more, especially when it comes to cross-border payment. Compliance requirements are more, as I said, differ because here in cross-border payments, funds paid or taken in from a different country. So the location where the merchant is registered is different from the country where customer is making the payment. And it is also because each country has its own set of rules and regulations. So that is why the compliance requirements are more in cross-border payment. There are some other operational points as well. If you can see, can you change this slide, please? Just go back. Okay, so it's okay. So I was talking about the compliance requirement differ from country to country. and it is because every country has its own set of rules and regulation and compliances. The other part is the operational pain point. Definitely, people are more focusing, the seller more focuses on the timeline to realize the payment, the cross-border payments, currency conversion or fee on the currency conversion is the focus point. Documentation of closure or shipment to pay payment cycles. The people are very much concerned about the custom duties rate applied to the shipments on the cross-border e-commerce. So each country has its own taxes system. So I mean, we need to, or seller need to adhere that rules and regulation. So as far as my experience or my suggestion for cross-border seller, they should go with the payment partner or cross-border payment partner who are well aligned or compliant with the rules and regulations of seller's country as well as the buyer's country as well. I mean, their country and buyer's country as well. I mean, if I take the example of ping pong, then in India, we are well aligned with the RBI and OPGSP licenses. So on the other hand, we are in US, we are well aligned or regulated by the FinSec of the US. So, I mean, when you are going for a cross-border payment partner, so you must consider these things.
Fantastic. So I think some of the issues around payment remittances have been covered very, very diligently by Nitin. We will have more when we come on to the business account management during the course of the presentation. In the meantime, let's move on to the next slide, Sakshi. Perfect. So while we have been discussing how to mitigate some of the pain points, here are some of the enablers in your cross-border strategy. And this actually includes localized content and marketing. Actually a no-brainer. You need to have your content in local languages. For instance, if you're looking at listing your products in the countries in the Middle East, except probably for UAE, where a larger percentage is actually an expat population, the more larger expanse of countries in the region, the likes of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, a good percentage of population actually speaks Arabic. So you need to redesign your content in Arabic. It should also mean that some of the images which you shoot on live models or on bodies should also have the social cultural ethos of these countries into consideration. In terms of choice of partners, as I was mentioning in the previous model, you can choose to work with brand distributors, you can choose to work with 3PL partners, you can also choose to work with importer on record who could take care of a few of your legal compliance related issues. But the last part is very, very critical in terms of technology enablement. So when you're looking at a pure play expansion in the cross-border space, we definitely recommend that all the sellers need to have a system which has benefits of uniform inventory view. It has integrations to various channels of retail, not limiting you to only an online only channel. You need to have visibility on the shipment tracking through your logistic partner network. You should be having a facility of uploading your catalog real time across various channels, and payment reconciliation, which my colleague Nitin has just about spoken. And then again, when you're looking at your own stores, you should develop a system which has, or rather a web store which has currency conversion, options for local language conversion, a very dynamic UI and UX. And I can also say integration with 3PLs become very important, especially when you are picking up orders which are B2C parcels which you are wanting to ship abroad. So these become very important considerations in your cross-border journey. And I have just about stressed it more with the next slide. So here we talk about a comprehensive GTM strategy for sellers. And some of the important considerations which I've noted down could be market readiness in terms of your product assortment and competitive pricing. You need to be very, very closely looking at the market dynamics, the kind of competitive landscape that you're having, and the value add that your product will be having for that particular market. So your assortment has to be custom made for a market rather than a me-too product. You need to also look at brand and product registration in the market to avoid a scenario where there is a counterfeit product. You need to be able to fulfill orders as per the SLAs defined by various channels and also look at cost effectiveness. Logistics and working capital become another important consideration. A lot of people have actually mentioned about marketing spends. What do I really spend on a particular channel? So again, the answer to that question is it really depends on your risk appetite. Marketplaces do not mandate a fixed percentage of sales as the only alternative for your marketing spend. You can either have a wallet balance, you can choose to have a percentage of sales, or you can do campaigns in association with your channel partners, each of which will be a very, very differentiated strategy depending on the country and the marketplace that you choose from. And the last important consideration is in terms of managing your local operations, which includes tax registrations, compliance, channel relationships, analytics, amongst others. So for you, in order to meet some of the points mentioned, you can either choose to have your own setup, or you can utilize the service of some of the partners like Importer on Record. You can use a digital marketing agency. You may also wish to align with tax consultants in the country of retail to take care of your taxation issues. So that becomes some of the pointers as far as your go-to-market strategy is concerned, but there could be other points which you may also be willing to consider. Moving on.
It's time to have another poll, Abhishek.
Okay, so let's have the second poll question before we go to the next slide. Over to you, Sakshi. The next poll question coming up, 30 seconds for all attendees to record their answers. Perfect. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move on to the next slide. So here I would request my colleague Nitin to share some light on how sellers can really grow their e-commerce sales with business account management. Nitin?
Yes, Abhishek. So when seller decide to go for a e-commerce or a cross-border e-commerce, so besides selecting the e-commerce platform, you need some expertise, expert advice, or help on various other things like which of your product are in demand for the marketplace or the foreign marketplace, which e-commerce platform do people shop from in your target country, who are your competitor there, will you able to ship to those countries or not, especially the small and medium entrepreneur who are good in production. They know their product well, but they need expert advice or help for cataloging their product, inventory management, pricing and orders, logistics, returns and returns, payment reconciliation management system. So these are the things which are a bit, you can say, complex, and expert advice is required. I mean, or I can say for this here, service provider like Vinculum plays a vital role. I mean, they can help seller very well in these kind of things. Similarly, we can say Ping Pong is also helping Amazon seller, their existing Amazon seller, with their business escalator program, in which beside Amazon global payment, we are helping seller in their product selection. We are helping for appropriate category selection, product listing optimization, Amazon SEO consulting, and many other things related to Amazon sales. Our main objective with this business accelerator program is to scale their business global sales actually.
Okay, perfect. So with that, we come to the end of the presentation for today. And Sakshi, can we take the questions from the participants? Okay, I already have a few questions coming in.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this question comes in, and I'm just kind of reading this out. How is the potential for whole spices in global e-commerce through this model? Perfect. So Nitin, if I can go first, and then I will ask you to kind of come on this one.
Yeah, yeah.
So there is absolutely no doubt that India is one of the top exporters when it comes to spices globally, apart from some of the other countries in the Southeast Asian region. And there is immense potential for spices to do well in markets, especially when where there is a larger percentage of the Asian population. So one of your important considerations that you need to consider is your target segment. I would say Northern America, Middle East, Southeast Asia, all three of them are very interesting markets for you to consider. However, when it comes to spices, there are a couple of parameters that you need to consider. One is these are perishable items. So each of your product needs to have a barcode which is specific to that particular country, and it also needs to have an HSN code. These products also need certifications in every country, just like how Amazon has an FDA. Each country, for instance, in Dubai, we have the product registrations which are verified by the Dubai Municipal Authority and by the Department of Health Administration, or DHA as it is commonly called. So you need to look at certifications which are country specific. And last but not the least, you could also look at the shelf life of the product and the storage. So these products could have a shelf life with a minimum of 6 months. Marketplaces normally for these kind of categories mandate to have a product shelf life of no less than 6 months from the date of expiry. And some of these products may also require a temperature controlled warehouse. As we say, Vinculum and some of our 3PL partners do provide this facility across the geos where we enable cross-border. Nitin, your take on this question?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you when it comes to spices. There is a great opportunity to that. And beside that, I mean, we must check in advance with the FDA thing and all.
Okay, the next question comes in from one of our colleagues who's mentioned, for health and beauty categories, do you need any special certification in the US? Nitin?
If you are having your own brand, then definitely it should be patents and all. It is required. But if you're selling the other brands, or you are a reseller or you're a wholesaler, then you should be authorized seller for that. That's the thing.
Okay. The next question says, how does a brand manage marketplace returns in cross-border e-commerce? Okay, so I'll take this question. Typically, cross-border marketplace returns again depend on the channels and on the country. Some marketplaces on the B2C model have a return policy, which means that products which are coming back as returns on account of customer not being available to pick up the consignment, or customer not liking the product, are normally sent back to the country because there is no local presence or entity for the seller. However, there are also models where there are local entities who can register on behalf of a brand. I was mentioning about the model which includes a 3PL and an IOR. We also have brand distributors. So typically in those two models, any kind of returns that comes back from marketplaces can be put for a period of 60 to 180 days in terms of resale, provided that the good is in selling condition. You may either choose to fulfill orders which come in subsequently from the marketplaces, or in case there are defective products, they can be consolidated and there can either be local liquidation, or you can send back the defective products in one shot to the country. There are also some marketplaces which, even on a drop shipment model, offer you 180 days of storage, obviously at a separate charge for storage. But these marketplaces retain your products. This will actually save you cost of logistics because the product is not getting returned back to your country of origin. At the same time, the marketplace will ensure every possible aspect, including promotions and discount, to liquidate your product in the country itself. Nitin?
Yes, Abhishek. Returns are the part of e-commerce business, right? We can't avoid that. But again, when it comes to return, if you're selling at an global e-commerce platform, So better you should well aware about what kind of return policies, that e-commerce platform is having, right? So you need to adhere that. And besides that, if you are selling with your own website, so definitely you should clearly mention all your terms and condition and the return policies.
Okay, the next question comes in. Does Ping Pong support payment for direct export business? How is Ping Pong different from the other providers?
So yes, we support B2B payments, right? There are some prerequisite to that. We required some export documentation and invoices to approve that payment. So we support that. Beside that, we have one product that is B Pocket, where your buyers from US and Canada can pay directly to you from their Ping Pong account to your Ping Pong account. You can receive B2B payments.
Okay. We have another question. Do you have a strong, stable, and callable plan for Africa? Okay. So yes, I think between Ping Pong, Nitin, I'll probably tell you to come in after I answer this. But yes, from a Vinculum perspective, we are definitely connected with some of the marketplaces in the MENA region. A lot of shipments from, in fact, a lot of shipments in Africa actually originate from UAE and Middle East. Having said that, there are niche marketplaces like Jumia which operate in the African continent, and Vinculum definitely has APIs both from an order management perspective, and we are also developing APIs for some of our other products like product information management, catalog management system, and WinRico. There are some challenges in terms of last mile delivery in the African continent. South Africa is well entrenched in this space. And yes, we also have partners who are integrated with us. So in case you would need assistance in local fulfillment and storage, we could offer that to you additionally in South Africa. Nitin, if you want to add.
Yes, we are helping Amazon seller who are selling in UAE market. So yes, we are helping for their cross-border payment. We have a virtual currency for that. We are well aligned with the Amazon payment service policy for that as well. And for the Saudi Arab, so this segment, this country Amazon has recently started. So in a month or two, we will be able to provide a virtual account for Saudi Arab as well.
Okay, the next question comes in again, which country and which platform to target for kids clothing? Okay, very interesting question. It actually depends on the country where you want to kind of do business in. So if I was to talk about Southeast Asia, the top marketplaces in terms of kids, the usual suspects are Lazada, Zalora, and Shopee. Zalora is again a very curated marketplace. They have a mix of high-end to mid-segment brands. Lazada and Shopee also have local sellers who are enabled on the platform. We also have other marketplaces like Q10. There is Zilingo. There are other marketplaces which are country specific. For instance, if I talk about Indonesia and Malaysia, we have marketplaces like Blibli and Bukalapak. If I talk about Indonesia, we have marketplaces like JDID. If I talk about Vietnam, we have marketplaces like Sendo and Tiki. All of these marketplaces, or some of them, will have kids as a category. And the only important consideration for you to measure is your product assortment, product fit for this market, your pricing, and when it comes to clothing, it becomes very important for you to consider sizing. Kid sizing becomes very, very important in these markets. You need to have sizes written not only in US, UK sizes, but also cater to some of the body structures in this region to make the products appropriate. Okay, we are having another question coming up. It says, does Vinculum have an API to Amazon and Noon in UAE for order and stock management? I want to sell my products in UAE. Do I need product certifications for beauty and personal care? Okay, so yes, we do have APIs with Amazon and Noon. The APIs are in respect of order management system. We have warehouse management system. The catalog upload is consistently there for both Noon and Amazon. And our proprietary product WinReco is also integrated with Amazon, and it's in a beta days testing with Noon. In terms of stock management, we are partnered with some of the leading 3PLs in the region, the likes of DTDC, DHL, and RMX. So you have a choice to keep the inventory in Middle East and fulfill orders locally. Dubai also requires you to have a local entity on account of the VAT registration. So it is imperative for you to keep the goods in Dubai to retail locally. And you also mentioned about Dubai being an important market consideration, or rather UAE being an important market consideration for your expansion into Saudi Arabia and a couple of other regions. So yes, we do offer other value-added services, including local content curation and taxation services when it comes to UAE as a market. Nitin, anything specific you would want to talk about this market when it comes to payment remittances for Middle East?
Yes, as I said, I mean, currently we are supporting the UAE market, and for Middle East we are coming with the UAE current, the Saudi Arab currency in a month or two.
Okay. This is another interesting question. This is coming up. Just 1 second. Can Ping Pong help in capital funding, as most providers are offering this service?
Yes. We have tie-up with few third-party services who are providing capital funding. So you need to connect with us separately on that, and definitely will help with the capital funding.
Okay. Another question coming up: how does payment security work for Amazon sellers? What is the assurance of payments via Ping Pong? Very interesting question.
Right.
Assurance is very, very required. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, totally agree with this my question. So yes, first of all, as I say, I have covered earlier as well that we are well aligned or under the regulation of RBI. We have OPGAC license as well. Beside that, Amazon has a payment service policy which has recently launched, and they have added only few payment service provider, and Ping Pong is that. Ping Pong is one of the payment service provider or listed in the payment service provider of Amazon. So yes, I mean, receiving payments or receiving Amazon global payment through Ping Pong is totally safe and secure.
Okay, perfect. We still have time for at least one question. And the next question comes in: what is the percentage of sales that I need to spend on marketplaces in Southeast Asia to market my products? Can Vinculum help me with converting my products into local language? Okay. I partly answered this question during the presentation, but the percentage of sales actually depends on the country and marketplace you choose to operate from. Specific to Southeast Asia, every marketplace has their own consideration. If you talk about a marketplace like Q10, they operate on what we call a model which has very low marketplace hosting charges or marketplace platform fees, but the model is very, very heavily dependent on the marketing which you invest. So they insist every seller which registers on the platform has a minimum wallet balance of SGD 500, which they can top up every month depending on the spend which they are doing. And these top-ups could be in the form of marketing, activations, any kind of banners that you would want to have on the web page and otherwise. Lazada, Shopee, Zalora, they have events both in the first half of the year and the second half of the year. The marketing spend could be depending on whether you would want to participate in events specific to, let's say, Singles Day, or they have 12/12 and 11/11, or a Black Friday, or whether you would wish to participate when a particular category is getting promoted. So they would also have events around promoting specific categories. There would also be events around end of season sales. And when you typically launch a new product, that is also a time when you might want to consider attracting new customers by offering a value add. So there are multiple ways in which you can do marketing, and the percentage of sales actually depends on your appetite in terms of how you really want to build your brand in the country and the marketplace. Second question was around converting your products into local language. Yes, we work with our partners who are specialists in converting language to the major languages in Southeast Asia. So our partners actually curate language to Vietnamese, to Bahasa, in Indonesia and Malaysia. We also have language conversion in Arabic in the Middle East. So yes, we can help you in converting the language for your products from India. Is there anything you wish to add?
No, nothing. Abhishek.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
So I think we are almost done with our questions. I don't see any
just one. I mean,
Yes.
there are multiple questions on fashion jewelry category. So I mean, people are asking favorable market for the fashion jewelry category. So yes, if you are from India, then Amazon and eBay are the perfect for selling jewelry, and you can straight away start with the US, UK, and Australia market. These are very good for the fashion jewelry. And the reason I'm suggesting eBay and Amazon for Indian sellers, because they have local support team here, so you can immediately start selling.
Perfect. So that's been a very exciting session, and we've almost come to the end of the session due to time constraints. I would firstly want to thank Nitin for the wonderful insights that he shared in the webinar. I would also want to thank Sakshi, my moderator and co-colleague, for doing the session extremely well. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the attendees for taking out time to attend the webinar. It's been one of those challenging periods. Working from home is the new normal. So I would appreciate you taking out time for attending this webinar. We look forward to having you again on our next event, details for which will be shared with you over email. Till then, stay safe and best wishes. I'm your host, Abhishek, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.